Welcome back, folks, to another episode of the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. I'm Joe DeLeone, joined by Ryan Roberts to continue on with our positional rankings on the defensive side of the football. Today, we are doing linebackers. Going to be a nice discussion here, but this linebacker group is probably the weakest defensive group. You would say so, Ryan?
No, I would say interior defensive line, but I have mixed feelings with this linebacker class, man. Like, I do like some of the pieces, but I just think there's a lot of overhyped players this year. So I don't know.
Yeah, there is a bit of overhype on some of these guys, especially somebody like Christian Harris, who we were just talking about from Alabama. And we're going to end up going into one specific guy that you have a bit overhyped. And we're going to go over all of that as we typically do in our positional ranking episodes. Before we get to that, though, folks, I just want to tell you about Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info and odds. Find all of the latest sports developments, including this week's odds for the Masters and the start of Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino and poker games. It's super easy to get started, so join today. Learn why everyone is saying BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on popular sports and shows. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Ryan, first up, as always, biggest sleeper. You decided to go with Clarence Hicks from UTSA. And you decided to point out to me when you were writing his name down, this was a deep, deep pull. Why is this such a deep pull to go with him?
Have you heard of him?
Barely.
Exactly. That's why it's a deep pull. I mean, he's a guy that's all right. Well, let's start off here. He's an interesting player. He had a really good 2021 season. He kind of played more on ball though, and he was kind of more of almost like a defensive end. But he's 6'2", 220 something pounds. So he's going to have to transition to more of a stacked linebacker role. But the kid has 33 plus inch arms, has a little bit of length to him, and he's an explosive athlete, man. He's pretty flexible. All the stuff that you really can work off of on the second level. Now he's a guy that is going to have to be taking along slowly because he hasn't done traditional stacked linebacker responsibilities. Like he hasn't worked angles from the middle of the field. He hasn't had gap integrity, really. Everyone has gap integrity, but what I'm saying is he doesn't have the flow from the second level that a traditional linebacker will have. So aiming points, eye discipline, there's going to be a bunch of things that Clarence Hicks needs to learn early on in the NFL. But what I like about him is that he's a pretty explosive athlete. So with the length that he has and the explosiveness, I think he can last on special teams, if nothing else, early on in his career. And I think he has some playmaking potential, and he has a good nose for football, and he has length, and he has athleticism. All building blocks that you could build off of. So Clarence Hicks is probably not getting drafted, probably more of a UDFA type of player, but I think that he's a kid that you could stick in the NFL and maybe eventually get some type of role on a defense because there are some unteachables to work with. His is just that he's a transitional player from more of a defensive end rush linebacker role to a traditional stacked linebacker.
For some reason, there's so many UTSA guys this year, which is so weird to say. And I think that they have most of those guys came out, and UTSA was really good this year. There's a pretty good crop of those Texas San Antonio kids.
Well, now there is. I mean, I mentioned Clarence Hicks. Obviously, one of the biggest rises in the cornerback group is Tariq Woolen, the 6'4" plus corner that was down in the Senior Bowl. You have Spencer Burford, who was also at the Senior Bowl, the offensive tackle, offensive guard. They have a running back, Sincere McCormick, who declared early. So they rode.
Yeah, I forgot that he came out. That was who I was thinking. Did he go back or not? But I do recall that he came out.
Well, probably their best player actually did go back to school, though, Rashad Wisdom, who we had on the show before, the safety. I think he's a really talented football player. I think he might end up being the best prospect of all the guys we mentioned, but UTSA certainly had a really notable 2021 season, and they're riding the momentum. I mean, how often do you see a running back out of UTSA declare early? Like, he's riding the momentum, and he was a combine invite. So, yeah, UTSA has a surprising amount of talent, which is not a typical thing at all for them.
It's kind of like this year's Tulsa. Might be a good parallel for that. Speaking of a guy that's a bit overhyped, getting a little bit too much attention right now, Ryan, you decided to go with Quay Walker from Georgia. We're going to talk about the other Georgia linebacker and some of my qualms with him as a prospect. But Quay Walker, I think, has been brought up heavily as like a top 50 prospect. You're not on board with that. What's the reasoning for that?
This was a tough one to pick, man. You mentioned Christian Harris in the front of the show. I think there's a couple of these super athletic linebackers that are just getting very overhyped. The Brandon Smiths of the world from Penn State. I ended up settling on Quay Walker because I've seen people talk about him in the first round conversation, or at least very early second round conversation. And this is just like, NFL teams make mistakes all the time. Scouts make mistakes all the time. We just did this one last year, though. Jamin Davis was just a mistake last year in the top 20 to the Washington Commanders, the Washington football team at the time. And it's like the same parallels. He's incredibly long, 6'3", 6'4", vines for arms, 240 plus pounds. Looks like, I mean, he's one of the first guy off the bus type of dudes. Like, that's one that you want the opposing teams to see first. And he's an explosive athlete. Like, there's no doubt. And there is upside to a player like there is a Quay Walker, and there was a player of a Jamin Davis. But the film is not nearly first-round caliber. And on the second level, as a linebacker, I have this debate all the time because, I mean, I played linebacker, Joe, so I'm a really harsh grader when it comes to linebackers. Eye discipline and diagnostic skills are so important on the second level. I mean, someone asked me, would you rather have a 4.65 guy with great eyes or a 4.45 guy with bad eyes? And it's good eyes all the time, man, because it doesn't matter. We have seen this mistake over and over again. Jamin Davis, Gerard Davis, when he came out of Florida a few years ago, these linebackers that run around aimlessly, it doesn't do anything, man. It is activity without accomplishment. It's not anything that you can really tangibly say helped your team. So I'm a big proponent of instincts on the second level of defense. That's why I was a big Nick Bolton guy last year, even though people talked about him not being the greatest athlete of all time. But he's got great eyes. He's always going to be in the right spot, and that's what I care about. So Quay Walker, developmental guy, day 2, I can get around that. But now that we're talking about him potentially being a top 50 selection, maybe a first-round pick, I'm out of Quay Walker because I think it's Jamin Davis all over again.
Yeah, I don't know what the circumstances and why so many people overlook that ability to make decisions at the linebacker position. It seems like when we're talking about defensive prospects, everybody gets so excited when they see a good athlete or somebody that's tall and long. But like you're talking about, you're that close to the line of scrimmage. You're not a defensive lineman where you're kind of just shoving your head in there if you're an interior guy. Edge rushers have, their own requirements for awareness and what they have to do. But you're that close to the line of scrimmage, you need to be able to react quickly. If you make a wrong decision, you're going the wrong way, you just open up a hole. It's not like you make a wrong decision, you can recover in a certain amount of time. If you completely misread a play, you just opened up potentially for like a 20-yard rushing play, if not longer.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we see it all the time, man. Even I remember everyone fell in love with Devin Bush coming out of Michigan a few years ago. Devin Bush has been bad for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
Like, he just hasn't been good. And it's the same thing, man. Overvaluing athletes on the second level. Of course, you want good athletes. You want Luke Kuechly, who's a 4.5 something athlete at 240 pounds and has great eyes, but you can't sacrifice the great eyes. Like, that is the consistent thing. Everyone talks about like, oh, these athletic off-ball linebackers nowadays, right? Darius Leonard is probably the best space linebacker in the NFL. He ran a 4.7 flat. Like, he's not the dude that's running 4.4 something and just blowing up the combine. I need great eyes along with the athleticism. If you don't have good eyes, you can't play on the second level. That's just point blank to it, man. It's point blank.
All right, let's get into some guys that we hope might have good eyes in your top 5 linebackers. First up, Damone Clark from LSU. What drew you to Damone Clark that he made this top 5?
Yeah, him at 5 was Damone Clark for me. And maybe I'll start here. Damone Clark is not going to be the 5th linebacker off the board anymore, Joe, because he had a medical recheck where now he has to get I think it's a neck surgery, man, or a back surgery, something like that. It's like a congenital like type of thing though. So it's a pretty severe thing that he has to get. It's like a spinal fusion, similar, I think, to what Justin Ross had, if I remember correctly. So it is a big deal, obviously. So he's not going to be the 5th linebacker off the board, most likely. But I will say, he's another guy that, like, 2020, very hit or miss on him, man. Like, I saw the athlete on the second level. He's 6'3", he's 245, he could run. That's awesome. I thought the eye discipline and the diagnostic skills took a huge step forward in 2021 for LSU. And I thought he just seemed to always be in the right space, right place at the right time in this past season. He was always a good athlete. He always had a good body. He always had projectability. But I really thought he took his game to the next level in 2021. And I mean, phenomenal season for LSU. So hopefully he gets back healthy. Hopefully he gets back quick, because I think that he was a day 2 player based upon his film in 2021. I really thought that he showed out and had a really great season for LSU.
Yeah, tough to stand out for that LSU program that was really struggling last year because they were terrible across the board. But props to him for being a top quality linebacker prospect in this class. Now, your number 4 guy, Chad Muma from Wyoming, is somebody who I feel like didn't really get a ton of recognition coming out of the season. Goes to the Senior Bowl and then starts to really build up some hype. And I feel like a lot of people are asking questions about him. Why were you laughing, though? I'm curious. Did I say his name wrong? Is that what it was?
How's his name pronounced?
It's Muma, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Muma.
Mama. I hate these guys that have really easy to pronounce names and then they pronounce it a weird way.
Who's your mama?
Why would it be pronounced Muma? Why would it be pronounced Muma?
I didn't
tell us.
I didn't make up the name, man. I don't know what to tell you. I didn't make it up.
Get him on the show so we can ask him. But why do you like Muma though? Why is he number 4?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh at you. I'm sorry. For people
I'm very offended.
For people that are listening just the podcast, they're like, what is wrong with these people right now? I can't yeah.
I think people ask that regardless.
True. Yeah. I mean, check our reviews. Chad Muma, actually, our
good reviews minus the one occasional person who's like, I don't like how arrogant they are.
Yeah. No, we actually do have good reviews. We have a good fan base, so I appreciate everybody out there. Chad Muma, another guy, 6'3", 240 plus. He can run for days, man. He was from a small school, coming out of high school, and was kind of under recruited to a degree because of that. And he's grown into his body, obviously. And I think he's another guy that has really solid eyes on the second level, and the kid can run, man. Like sideline to sideline type of dude. He's a player, Joe, that I think can definitely play Mike. I think he can play Sam in a base front. I also think that maybe he can play a little bit of Will because he has upside to work in space and to kind of close the gap working in pursuit. So I think Chad Muma is one of the bigger risers in this year's class. I would be very surprised if he got out of the top 64 at this point. I think he's a second rounder for sure. Really good film, navigates space well. A better prospect, in my opinion, than Logan Wilson when he came out of Wyoming a couple years ago.
I was just about to ask that. So you think that he is further along? Because Logan Wilson was really talked up, especially come that final weekend, and people were saying that Wilson was going to be drafted early day 2, ends up going on day 2 to the Bengals, has had a really nice career so far and was a big reason why they were so good because he was a nice piece on that defense. But you think that Muma's better?
I do. I think he's a better prospect. I think Logan had a little better feel in coverage. So, I mean, that's really translated to the next level. I think he had 4 interceptions for the Bengals this year. So he was a really nice player in coverage. I think he had like 90-something tackles. So he was a good player, obviously, for the Bengals. But I really just see more of an all-around package with a guy like Muma. And I think Muma is also longer and a bit more – I think the straight line speed is probably similar, but I think he has a little more range just because he has a little bit of wider strides, a little bigger of a tackle radius. So, yeah, I do prefer him a little bit to Logan Wilson. Obviously, Logan Wilson is turned into a good football player at the next level, but I think Muma just has higher upside than Logan Wilson.
On to number 3, a popular name in this class, Nakobe Dean out of Georgia. So here's my thing with Nakobe Dean. And most people that listen to the show know that I don't watch a lot of prospect tape. That is changing for next cycle. That's just a little teaser for what to expect. But I have indirectly watched a little bit of Nakobe Dean, and everyone hypes this guy up as kind of like what Devin Bush was. I feel like, people try to not so much, but people try to act like he's this small, speedy. Devin Bush is an over exaggeration, but people try to act like he's this small. Okay.
I was merely shaking my head because you're right that it's just kind of an improper comparison.
But people keep talking like he's this small, really, really fast, shifty linebacker that's hard to track down. But I see on tape a really stocky little linebacker that's not that fast. He's quick. He changes direction decently well, but he's really not that fast. He lacks the length, and he's going in the opposite direction of what teams are working towards, which is guys that have that length, have more athleticism, can cover more ground. And I don't see it. Like I see somebody who doesn't really have what you're looking for. And I think that someone that small who also didn't test, so we don't really know what his numbers are. I don't know how that's going to succeed as a first round pick.
Why didn't he test also? He wasn't injured or anything, right?
I bet that his 40 time was probably, I bet that he had maybe an intention to, but he was running in like the 4.6s. And then everyone realized, and they saw what happened to Kyle Hamilton, where some people were geeking out over it, that they, because if he ran a 4.6, that's immediately way slower than everyone's talked him up to be. Everyone's made him seem like he's a 4.4 guy.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I mean, he might even be slower than that, man. He might be like a 4.7 something kid, which, I mean, so like, here's the positives to Nakobe Dean and why he's on this list. I think he has incredible instincts. He's always in the right spot. Those are the things that you immediately look at and you're like, yeah, he doesn't miss too many tackles despite him having a smaller tackle radius. He is a very aggressive hitter. He'll bring his pads behind him. There's no doubt about it. And I think that he is, and you mentioned this, I think he's flexible. I think he changes direction well. I think he does those things. But like you said, there is an absence of length. There is an absence of speed to a degree. I think his speed is sufficient. I don't think it's plus at all. And I talked to Joe for the show, and I would love feedback on this. So if you want to comment on the link below, you want to put a review on Apple Podcasts, I would just love to hear the feedback from the listeners out there. I saw a lot of people push back against Nick Bolton last draft cycle, push back heavy on him. And I love Nick Bolton. Anybody that follows me knows that I was a huge Nick Bolton fan. I had like a late 1, early 2 on him. Like I was huge on Nick Bolton. And I've seen the same people turn on Nick Bolton, but now love Nakobe Dean. And I think they're very similar players. Very similar. And I like Nakobe Dean. I would draft him day 2. I would draft him in the second round. I'd be fine with it because I do think that he's going to play good level football on the next level. But my question seriously is, why would you not like Nick Bolton, but you love Nakobe Dean? They're very similar players.
Doesn't add up.
Like they both lack length. They both have solid straight line speed. I didn't think that Nick Bolton might be a little straight line more fast than Nakobe Dean is. Nakobe Dean's a little more cat quick than Nick Bolton. So it's not a perfect comparison. But I just don't understand what makes one much more appealing than the other. So I just think it's a little bit of an inconsistency in that sense. But I do like Nakobe for what he is. I think he's going to be an undersized will linebacker who has really good processing, really good instincts, and he just has some knack for making plays. And sometimes that stuff is not quantifiable. Like you can quantify a 40 and do all that type of thing. And there is at a point where, like, if you are not a good enough if you are a low level athlete, it's debilitating and you can't make plays on the NFL level. But I think he's solid enough across the board that his instincts will allow him to make plays. So I have been kind of up and down with Nakobe Dean as well, just like you have, Joe. But ultimately, I think the instincts are good enough where he can make some plays on the NFL level.
I don't know. I'm a little more down than you are. I saw somebody do, and I'm not going to drop their name. I think this person's kind of a clown. I saw them do like a video breakdown on him, and he was literally pulling clips and was like just showing his monitor and was like talking about like he's so fast and all this stuff. And it's like people are worried he's going to get lost in traffic, but look at him bounce off blockers. And it's like I'm watching him like that's really pedestrian what he's doing. Like it's not that big of a, like you're acting like this is Roquan Smith. This is not Roquan Smith.
Yeah, Roquan Smith was a freak, dude. Yeah. That guy was a freak of nature. You need to tell me who this was after the show, by the way. I need to hear.
I will. Number 2, Devin Lloyd from Utah. I feel like Devin Lloyd has been like a staple at the top of the linebacker class. Everyone has had him since the start of the cycle, midway through the cycle, end of the college football season. He's just stayed as that consistent for everybody, that first round linebacker. Some think that maybe he could go early in the top 15. Some, I think, more realistic people see him as like a top 25 pick. Where are you at with Devin Lloyd, who's your number 2 linebacker?
I think he's a first rounder. I would be more comfortable with him somewhere 20 to 32. So like later first round, I would say. But I think there is some smoke about him going a little later. I think Dane Brugler, who obviously is very plugged in from The Athletic, I think he had him as like a top 10 player in the class. So like there is some love for Devin Lloyd. And the reason I like Devin a ton is 6'3", 235, long arms, length. He could play Sam, he could play Mike, and I think he could play Will because he has plus speed as well. That he's the same for me to a degree as Damone Clark this year. I thought the previous couple years, I mean, Devin Lloyd made plays because he's just a really good athlete and has a ton of length. He has a big tackle radius, and he makes some rangy plays. I think he was a former cornerback wide receiver in high school. I think he started as corner early on in his Utah career. So he has developed into this linebacker. It wasn't just a linebacker recruit that has just kept developing. So he has some ability to play in space. And I think that his eyes really took a massive leap from 2020 to 2021. Like, I thought it was good in 2020, but I thought it was really, really good in 2021. His biggest thing is now you need to continue to get more physical. Like, he has shown the ability to work off of contact and stack at the point of attack and shed and do all those types of things. But it still is a little inconsistent. He could still be better with his hands and his pop and his, just his understanding of where to attack leverage. Like, he could do a little better with that, but he's a really good athlete. He has good eyes and he has scheme versatility. I think he can play in any scheme. I think he can play multiple linebacker spots. And he even had some rush reps, Joe, where it's like, Micah Parsons obviously was used a lot with the Dallas Cowboys on the edge a ton this year. And I think he had like double-digit sacks. I don't think Nakobe is quite that volume of a sack getter, but he's had a lot of sack production in his career because he can play on the edge a little bit and he can rush the passer. He's got some length to him and he's got some explosiveness. So he's just an all-around weapon, I think, on the next level. He reminds me a lot of Keith Bullock that used to play with the Tennessee Titans back in the day, man. He was just such a good linebacker for so long, and he used that length and that explosiveness to his ability. So I'm a big fan of Devin Lloyd. I would take him firmly in the first rounds.
This last guy you are certainly a big fan of.
Yep.
And the reason why I say that is I don't think anybody else has Leo Chenal out of Wisconsin as their linebacker one. And I think that more people need to be talking about this kid as a number one linebacker in this class because we were exposed to the athleticism that he has at the combine. And I think a lot of people, and the one thing that you were saying to me throughout this class and this process for 2022 is that a lot of people just assume that Leo Chenal is like this big bumbling linebacker, and he's not. This is a really, really good athlete. Maybe he doesn't get picked as the first linebacker off the board, but man, I think that he's gonna do some damage at the next level.
Yeah, he won't get picked as the first linebacker because, like I just said, Devin Lloyd's kind of just been that guy throughout most of the cycle, and Nakobe Dean even has some steam. So I doubt he is the first linebacker, but I agree completely. I think you said it perfectly. 6'3", 250, just a incredibly strong guy. I mean, the video of him doing 40+ reps on the bench a couple years ago at 225 has been circulating. Like, this kid is a player. I've talked to him now a couple of times, and he was a player that was very under-recruited. He went to a camp or something and then finally got the offer from Wisconsin, I think, during his junior season. So, like, he didn't have any scholarship offers in that point. He's an in-state Wisconsin kid. And his brother actually went to Wisconsin as well, John, who's in the draft process, even though he's 2 years older than him, which is pretty funny. But, yeah, Leo is a guy that you have the misnomer that, like, this is a downhill thumper at middle linebacker, and he is. He is one of the best linebackers I've ever seen at playing the run, playing off contact, stack and shed, the ability to just remain gap disciplined and make a lot of plays at or behind the line of scrimmage. He does that stuff tremendously well. The kid's a hammer. But then you see him at the combine and you're like, oh, this kid is 250, 453, 40-inch verts. Like, not a good athlete, Joe, like an elite athlete historically. Like, let's call it what it is. This kid has elite athleticism. And then you watch the film, and I think that stuff translates, man. Like, you see him working in pursuit. You see the speed. He's the best interior gap blitzer I think I've ever evaluated too, man. Like, blitzing A and B gaps. The only player that I saw against Iowa, they actually put him like up right in front of Tyler Linderbaum, almost like a stand-up nose. And he just dominated Linderbaum because he's just so physical, so explosive, understands how to attack leverage. The only issue that people are going to keep going back to, and I get it, is that he doesn't have a ton of experience in coverage because they would just blitz him a ton because the dude's a hammer. And I get it. But, like, you can't tell me that 4.53 with the movement skills he has, with the size that he has, with the explosiveness that he has, can't get to be a solid player in pass coverage. You can't tell me that. You can't. He's not a bumbling guy, like you said. He's not a a limiting athlete. Like the kid can absolutely move and the kid has size. So I believe that Leo Chenal has upside in pass coverage. I think he's going to be a dynamic blitzer. I think he's going to be a dynamic run defender. I'm all in on him. He's a top 20 player in this class for me. He will not get drafted there, but I'm telling you right now, this kid is going to be a starting linebacker on the next level. He's going to be the best linebacker on a team very shortly. Going to be perennial 100-plus tackles, perennial 10-plus tackles for loss. This kid is going to be a potential Pro Bowler, in my opinion. I think that highly of Leo Chenal.
Folks, there you have it. Ryan's linebacker one, Leo Chenal. Thank you for tuning in as always. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date because we've got a few more position groups to get through.